pris i ekonomisk vetenskap till Alfred Nobels minne. Och på den andra sidan professor Kerstin Enflo, ledamot i priskommittén och sakkunnig i ämnet. My name is Hans Elgren. I'm Secretary General of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. And to my right is Professor Joel Mokyr, Chair of the Committee for Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel. And to my left, Professor Kerstin Enflo, member of the committee and an expert in this field. Årets pris handlar om att skapa och förstöra. This year's prize is about creation and destruction. Kungliga Vetenskapsakademin har idag beslutat att utdela Sveriges Riksbankspris i ekonomisk vetenskap till Alfred Nobels minne för 2025 till Joel Mokyr, Northwestern University, USA, Philippe Aghion, Collège de France, anunciado, Frankrike, samt London School of Economics, Storbritannien, och Peter Howitt, Brown University, USA, för att ha förklarat innovationsdriven ekonomisk tillväxt. Ena hälften av priset går till Joel Mokyr för att ha identifierat förutsättningarna för ihållande tillväxt inom teknologisk utveckling. Och andra hälften gemensamt till Philippe Aghion och Peter Howitt för teori om ihållande tillväxt genom kreativ förstörelse. The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences has today decided to award Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel for 2025 to Joel Mokyr, Northwestern University, USA, Philippe Aghion, Collège de France, and INSEAD, France, and London School of Economics, UK, and Peter Howitt, Brown University, USA, for having explained innovation-driven economic growth. With one half, the prize goes to Joel Mokyr for having identified the prerequisites for sustained growth through technological progress. And the other half, jointly to Philippe Aghion and Peter Howitt for the theory of sustained growth through creative destruction. Professor Mokyr will now give us a short summary. Please.
Thank you. During almost all of humankind's history, living standards did not change noticeably from generation to generation. Economic growth was on average zero and stagnation was the norm. Sporadic episodes of growth, sometimes driven by new discoveries, always eventually petered out. Over the last 200 years or so, things have been very different. Sustained economic growth, driven by a continuous stream of technological innovations and improvements, has replaced stagnation. New medicines, safer cars, better food, more efficient ways of heating and lighting our homes, the internet and increased opportunities for communication with other people over long distances are just a few dimensions of economic growth. Over time, this process has fundamentally changed our societies. Over the span of 1 to 2 centuries, almost everything has changed. Change, not stagnation, has become the new normal. How could sustained economic growth based on a steady stream of technological innovations replace stagnation? What conflicts arise in a society when new products and production methods replace the old ones? How should policy be devised so that societies do not fall back into stagnation? Answers to these questions are what this year's prize is about. Joel Mokyr used historical observations to identify the factors necessary for sustained growth based on technological innovations. Philippe Aghion and Peter Howitt had produced a mathematical model of creative destruction and ended endless process in which new and better products replace the old. With the understanding of the mechanisms of creative destruction provided by the Laureates and the follow-up research, we have a better chance to make sure growth can continue and be guided in the direction that benefits humankind.
Thank you, John. Professor Enflo will now give us a more in-depth presentation of this year's prize. Please.
Thank you. During the last 200 years, economic growth has been surprisingly stable. We can see it here with graphs covering the United Kingdom and the United States, where we have GDP per capita on the y-axis here, measured in a relative scale. That means that the slope of the trend lines here are the constant growth rates. The message here is clear. Over this period, GDP per capita has more than doubled with each generation, and the total increase here has been more than 20-fold. So what can then account for all these massive growth rates? The answer is technological change. And as you can see here, with the example of telephones, technological change has progressed steadily too. The process has been creative in the sense that it builds on new ideas and innovations, but it's also been destructive because each new phone here has replaced the previous version and made that technology obsolete. This year's prize is exactly about that. It's about explaining innovation-driven sustained economic growth. In particular, how did such growth become sustained in the first place? And secondly, how can growth continue despite the conflicting interests growth creates when new technology replaces the old? The first part of the prize goes to Joel Mokyr, an economic historian who noted that technological change alone cannot explain economic growth because technological change predates growth by millennia. And we can see it here in this graph that goes back to medieval times for Sweden and England. Over these 400 years, we see that GDP per capita barely changed, despite the fact that some really important innovations took place in this period, such as the heavy plow or the printing press. With this, Mokyr identified the important prerequisites for growth, and I'm going to go through them with you right now. The first one is useful knowledge. It has two components. Prescriptive knowledge, which means a set of instructions or recipes that can guide to somebody how to carry out a certain technology, like a user manual, if you will. For most of human history, what was known to society about technological change rested mostly on this type of knowledge. People knew how to operate a certain technology, but they didn't know why it worked. And that brings us to the second component here, propositional knowledge. Knowledge about rules and regularities in the physical world that can explain to us why the technologies work. We can think about this as science in the broad sense. Mokyr tells us that these two components need to come together and interact in order to generate the sustained stream of innovations needed to generate sustained growth. Here we can see the feedback loops here. But even the best ideas would still be left on the drawing table if it wasn't for the skilled mechanics and engineers that could take the drawings from the drawing table, scale up the models, and put science into economic use. For this, mechanical competence is a key prerequisite. And finally, societies need to be open to change. Mokyr exemplifies with several instances during history where groups, fearing to lose out from technological change, tried to block it. The most famous example here is probably the Luddite movement, where skilled textile workers were destroying machinery to protest technological change. But if society has arenas where groups can meet and negotiate their claims and come up with mutually beneficial compromises, change is rather embraced. All these factors came together for the first time with the Enlightenment that paved the way for sustained growth, first in Britain and then moving on to other countries. And that brings us to the second part of the prize. Philippe Aghion and Peter Howitt created a mathematical model of growth where creative destruction features as a core element. This model became a paradigm shift in how we think about economic growth, conflicting interests. As such, the model can explain how growth can be such a disruptive process at the firm level and still result in those stable aggregate growth rates that we saw in the beginning of the presentation. Here, we see how they derive the economy's average growth rate from the model, but I'm not going to go through all the mathematical details with you right now. Instead, let's focus on the core components of the model. Here, firms invest resources into R&D, research and development, in order to innovate and improve on existing products. If they are successful, they can become market leaders and earn a profit. But it also means that they outcompete another actor in the business, and that person has to leave the business. This is called the business stealing effect in their model. But it's of course not stealing in any formal sense of the word. With this, the model identifies two forces that pull in opposite directions with respect to policy. On the one hand, policy should support the innovation process, these guys climbing up here, because they can build on each other's ideas, and ideas have a value to society. But at the same time, policy must also consider the business stealing effect, especially in the cases where the technology delivered to the market only needs an incremental improvement. Because the model takes the entire economy into account, it can also speak directly to policy, such as, for example, how to set R&D subsidies in practice. With extension, the model also can talk about things like how to optimize safety nets for those workers that have seen their jobs lost due to creative destruction. These are, of course, all pressing policy questions in today's world, and they have long-term consequences. So, to sum up, during the last 200 years, the world has seen more economic growth than ever before in human history. This growth has increased our living standards in so many different ways. But still, 200 years is still just a short period compared to the long-run history of stagnation that we saw before. The Laureates' work reminds us that we should not take progress for granted. Instead, society must keep an eye on the factors that generate and sustain economic growth. These are science-based innovation, creative destruction, and a society open for change. Thank you.
Thank you, Kerstin. I hope we have Professor Aghion on the phone. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Good morning, and congratulations again to the prize.
Yeah, that's quite a surprise, and I'm still speechless. It came really as a huge surprise. I did not expect it, so I can't find the words to express what I feel.
I understand that it can be difficult. Here you are live at the press conference. There are many interested journalists from the Swedish and the international press.
Yes.
Are you ready to take some questions?
Yes, absolutely.
Someone who would like to start? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Alfred Nobel from Sweden. Congratulations on the prize. Classical question, how are you planning to spend the prize money?
That's a good question. I have a research lab at Collège de France and INSEAD in Paris, and so usually we have research projects, and I invest in these research projects with younger researchers that work with me, and where we are pushing a number of projects on growth and artificial intelligence, green growth, R&D policy, and that's what I want to. That's what I will do probably, and to push this wonderful enterprise which is this lab. Could you? Is that a yes?
Hello, Professor. Congratulations from the Polish television. Congratulations. I have a question about certain consequences of your work, because your mathematical model helps us understand how sustained growth actually works. I wonder, because since our economy is based on the sustained growth model, is there do you see any risk of that sustained growth that we've seen in the global economy in the past 200 years? Is there a risk that that in the future? Thank you very much.
I mean, threats, thank you so much. I mean, threats on economic growth, of course you have the current trends towards deglobalization, tariff barriers. Those things are obstacles to growth because you need a big market to grow more. I mean, a bigger market means more rents for innovators, means more possibilities to exchange ideas, means that you can transfer technology, means more competition. So openness is a driver of growth. Anything that gets in the way of openness is an obstacle to growth. So I see there kind of dark clouds currently, accumulating, pushing for, barriers to trade and openness. Okay, so that's one thing. The other, of course, concern is that, green growth, we want to reconcile growth with the environment. So how can we make sure that we will innovate greener? Firms do not spontaneously innovate green. They tend to innovate in what they used to do. If they used to innovate in dirty technology, they will continue spontaneously to innovate in dirty technologies. How can you redirect technical progress towards green? Carbon price, carbon tax, green industrial policy. How should we design this policy? Well, that's a fantastic challenge in front of us. And AI has fantastic growth potential, but we know that with inappropriate competition policy, the same as with IT can happen. Some superstar firms may end up dominating everything and inhibiting potential entry of new innovators. So how can we make sure that today's innovators will not stifle future entry and future innovation? But those are, very, exciting questions that keep us busy.
Yes, please, here.
Hello and congratulations. I'm from the Swedish Space Agency, TT. Maybe this is a bit of repetition, but how do you see the tariffs from the US? How large a threat is that to sustain growth, would you say?
It's true that, I'm not welcoming the protectionist wave in the US, okay? And that's not good for world growth and innovation. But on the other hand, let's look at the right side. I think European countries have to realize that we should no longer let US and China become technological leaders and lose to them. I mean, what happened is that after a period of catching up of Europe towards the US in per capita GDP terms between World War II and the mid-80s, since the mid-80s, the average per capita GDP of the Eurozone has declined relative to the US. And the big reason is that we failed to implement breakthrough high-tech innovations. We remain circumscribed to mid-tech incremental. And that's very much in relation to the Draghi report, but we are missing proper policies and institutions to innovate breakthrough high-tech. A true single market, on our true single market, gold plating practice and get in the way of achieving a single market. We don't have proper financial ecosystem of innovation. I know Sweden is doing very well. You have institutional investors, but other European countries should emulate Sweden in setting up proper financial ecosystem, integrated capital market, institutional investors, venture capital. We need all those things that they have in the US. And also, on research, we have the ERC, the European Research Council, but we should also have ERC for labs to finance laboratories on long-term basis. And also, we don't have the equivalent of the DARPA, of the Defense Advanced Project Agency, which is a pro-competition way of doing industrial policy. That we don't have in Europe. In the US and in China, they found ways to reconcile competition and industrial policy. In Europe, in the name of competition policy, we became very anti any form of industrial policy. I think we need to evolve on that and find ways to reconcile industrial policy in areas like defense, climate, AI, biotech, where we are very good, we have very good research there. Reconcile this multi-industrial policy with competition policy. We have fantastic basic research in Europe. You know that most breakthrough patents cite a lot European research, but the European research does not translate into breakthrough fantastic soft power, but we need to harness all the potential we might have.
Thank you. Is there some more questions here? Here, please.
Yes, please. Congratulations, Professor Aghion.
Thank you so much.
My name is Philippe Aghion. I'm from the Swedish newspaper, Noticias.
Yeah.
Now that the sum of human knowledge is available to machines and can be synthesized with AI, how do you expect the process of creative destruction to change?
So it's true that AI may accelerate creative destruction, but I think that, I think AI has a big growth potential because AI automates tasks both in the production of goods and services and in the production of ideas. So there is a huge, I think, growth. Ideas will become easier to find more than ever thanks to AI. So AI has a big growth potential. The problem is to harness this potential, and that's why competition policy is important. If we don't have appropriate competition policy, we will inhibit the growth potential. When it comes to employment, of course, there is a big fear that AI will destroy a lot of jobs. But that's why it's important to have good education system, because at school we learn to learn, and good security system on the labor market. Like you do have in Sweden, like they have in Denmark. We should emulate Sweden and Denmark on that front. And I think that but I believe also that it's true that, when you have a revolution like AI, there is a fear of unemployment. But it's true that machines substitute for humans. But on the other hand, it allows you to become much more productive, and therefore it increases the world market demand for your products, and that allows you to increase employment. If you look at all big technological revolutions, starting with the steam engine, you have a Laureates movement there, because people were fearing in England unemployment due to the steam engine. Then you have the electricity revolution, where Keynes predicted mass unemployment. And then you have the IT, where we were scared that robots will create mass unemployment. It never happened, because you have this productivity effect. When you introduce IT or AI, you become more productive, more competitive, and therefore the world market demand for your products goes up. This productivity effect turns out to be quite important. But of course we need good institutions on education, labor market policy, to harness this productivity potential. And to make sure we minimize the negative effects of the new industrial revolution, like we did with previous one. So again, I think the prosperity and happiness is the combined result of institutions and of technology and institutions and policy. And if we don't adapt institutions and policy to the technology, then of course we get unhappy outcomes. But if we know how to adapt them, then we can get the best from the technological revolutions.
Thank you, Professor Aghion. We have time for one last short question and a short answer. Yes, please.
Hey, my name is Joel Mokyr, I'm from Swedish EFN. Congratulations. What would the most important policy today for governments to implement to help innovation and creative destruction?
Well, I think it will not only be one policy, it's a combination. You need you need to invest seriously in research, the green industrial policy, the research policy, and at the same time you need to create this single market as a competition. That's a smart combination between more competition and the market integration on the one hand, and voluntary policy on research and industrial policy, which is very pro-innovation. This combination, I think, lies at the heart of making Europe and our countries more innovative and faster growing, I think.
Thank you, Professor Aghion. And once again, our warmest congratulations. Hope you accept that.
Thank you so much.
We look forward to seeing you here in Stockholm in December for the Nobel Prize ceremony.
Thank you. I look forward to it very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Let's move on to if you have some questions about the prize, to the prize committee, or about the work. I think we might have time to one or two final questions. Yes, please.
I have a question because I'm wondering, this year's prize clearly puts in focus the importance of new technologies and the importance of innovation. and the importance of financing that kind of research. Is that a commentary from the Nobel Committee on the ongoing discussion on financing science, particularly in the United States?
No, we don't make any commentaries about any current events in that sense. Our work is all about the scientific contribution of these laureates, so it is actually only about celebrating the work that they have done and honoring that with a prize.
Yes. Yeah, one last question there, please.
I'm wondering, these three, Professor Aghion and Howitt, they work together. Mokyr is perhaps the odd one out. Was it difficult to sort of split the prize between these three, and or was it a natural fit for the committee to choose these three together?
No?
Well, it's true that their approaches are very different. Joel Mokyr is an economic historian and has really dig deep into the historical evidence that he uses, while Peter Howitt and Philippe Aghion have used mathematical models. So it's very different. On the other hand, I think it's very clear when you think about it that the questions that they try to address, what are the mechanisms behind sustained long-run growth, and then you understand that they complement each other very much. So I think it shows that different areas of science often are very complementary.